This conference will now be recorded.
Asmada Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ragadirogan Sadadanushaktan Asheshakaya Prasudan Asheshan Aulsukya Moha Aradidan Jakhana Yopurva Vaidyaya Namostu Tasmai. So, Namaskaram to all of you. We will be discussing the Madhya Vargam today. We have completed our Taila Vargam, I think. So we will be discussing Madhya Vargam today. Madhya Vargam, actually, when I go through the text, it is interesting to note that it is very poorly discussed area in the text as well as in the commentaries. But interestingly, we find a large number of, a huge number of references in the Chikilsa Sthanam or anything related to the Chikilsa, wherein different types of Madhya Visheshas are used in different occasions. So what we should understand is that there is some sort of a specificity in its usage. Even though we call it as Madhyam in general, as far as the medicinal use is concerned, it is not so general. Instead, it is very specific. And Madhyam could be one of the most commonly used recreational drug all over the world, maybe from time immemorial. So that way, I think the descriptions given in the Ayurvedic classics about Madhyam needs some sort of a proper understanding, proper evaluation from very historical periods itself. Madhyam, the word Madhyam means something which intoxicates. Madhyadi janaha anena. Madhyadi janaha anena. Idi Madhyam. Something which intoxicates. Janaha, common man or anybody, the public, they get intoxicated. So anything which intoxicates is known as Madhyam. Madhyadi janaha anena idi Madhyam. And what we find here in our opening shlokas, 3 shlokas, I think, yes, that gives an overall idea about what this category of Dravya is all about. We will go through it first. Deepanam, Rojanam Madhyam, Tikshnoshnam, Tushti Pushtidam, Saswadu Tikta Kadugam Amlapagarasam Saram Sakashayam. Saswadu Tikta Kadugam Amlapagarasam Saram Sakashayam. Swara Arogya Pradibhavarnakrit Lakhu. Nashtanidra Adinidrebhyo Hitam Pittasra Dushanam. Nashtanidra Adinidrebhyo Hitam Pittasra Dushanam. Krishasthula Hidam Ruksham Sukshmam Srodo Vishodhanam. Vadashleshmaharam Yuktya Pidam Vishavad Anyatha. So this is the overall idea what we get from this sloka. So it is Rojanam, Deepanam, Tikshnoshnam, Tushti Pushtidam, Tushtidam and Pushtidam. Tushti is the Chitta Paridosha. It is given by, we can find it in the commentary of Aruna Datta. Tushtihi Chitta Paridoshaha, Santoshaha. It is more about the Chittam, mind. And Pushti is Sharira Poshaha. Pushti is Sharira Poshaha. So Madhyam is Tushtidam as well as Pushtidam. Saswadu Tikta Kadugam Amlapagarasam. Madhyam is Amlapagarasam. But along with that Amlapagam, we have Swadu Tikta Kadugam, and again in the next line we find Sakashayam. So it is Saswadu Tikta Kadugam Sakashayam Amlapagarasam. So practically it has got 5 tastes out of 6 except Lavana. Saram, it is Saram. Saranad. Then Swara Arogya Pradibha Varnakrit. Swarakrit, Arogyakrit, Pradibhakrit, Varnakrit, and Lekhu. It is quite attractive, so quite tempting when we go through these qualities. It is Swarakrit, Arogyakrit, Pradibhakrit, Varnakrit, and Lekhu. So a list of very ideal properties impregnated into one single Dravya looks quite attractive. But we will find the other side as well later. Nashtanidra adinidrebhyo hitam. Nashtanidra adinidrebhyo hitam. It is good equally in Nashtanidra as well as Adinidra. Then Ruksham, Sukshmam, Srodovishodhanam. Srodovishodhanatvam is very specific and very important. Then Nashtanidra adinidrebhyo hitam Pittasra Dushanam. Pittasra Dushanam. Pitta Dushanam, Asra Dushanam. Krishasthula hitam. Krishasthula hitam. It is good for Krisha as well as Sthula, as we discussed in the case of Thailam. Then Ruksham, Sukshmam, Srodo Vishodhanam. Ruksham, Sukshmam, Srodo Vishodhanam. Ruksham and Sukshmam. Ruksham and Sukshma. Srodo Vishodhanam. Vadashleshma Haram. So Vadashleshma Shamanam and Pittarekta Pradushanam. All these medicinal properties, there are all these things can be used for medical interventions, medicinal purposes. When yuktya pita, when it is logically administered or used, then you can expect all these things. Otherwise, anyadha vishavad. So there is a space for a rational use of Madhyam in medical practice. Otherwise, it will become Vishavad. It will be very toxic. So in the commentaries, we will find differences in opinion about that statements like Nashtanidra adinidrebhyo hitam. One interesting opinion what we find is Madhyam is actually a class of dravyas. It is not a single dravya. It is a class of dravyas, a group of dravyas. So you can find Madhyam which is good for Nashtanidra as well as another madhyam which is good for adinidra. Doesn't mean that the same type of madhya should be good in nashta nidra and adinidra. Same is the case with the krishasthulahidam. You may find some sort of madhyam which is good for krisha. Similarly, another type of madhyam which is good for sthula. So that is one way of explaining it, which is quite interesting. Whereas, in the same way as we find the explanation of krishasthula hidam in the case of Thailam, we find an equally or a similar type of explanation in the case of madhyam as well. So it says like, okay, if it has got that lekhana property or kabhahara property, so it is good in sthula, whereas it has got excellent srodha shuddhi shodhana property, ensuring the proper nourishing of the dhadus with the rasa, thereby working well with the krisha. So that is one way. In the same case, nashta nidra, it has got nashta nidra, nidra nasho anilad pittad. So when there is vada shamana property is there, it can be judiciously employed for nashta nidra, whereas it has got kabha shamana property, so it can be used for adinidra as well. That is another way of explaining. I think we should come out of all these explanations and should see what is happening in real application, because these words in the pages are not going to satisfy the needs of the society or the patients. You have to have first-hand experiences in using any of the dravya with some sort of a rationale. Otherwise, I think this will be of no use either to the Vaidya or to the Loka. So I think that attitude should change. So we have got long 6 lines about the Samanya Guna of Madhya, whereas we will find some sort of an improvised versions of the Madhya Gunas in different contexts. Like in Madhatyayam, it is more of a pathological backdrop that we explain Madhya in Madhatyayam. So in Madhatyaya Nidanam, we find Tikshnoshna Ruksha Sukshma Amlam Vyavai Ashukaram Lakhu. So the properties like Vyavai, which is very peculiar to Madhya Visheshas, it is not described or discussed in this Dravadravya Vidnyaniyam, but in Madhatyayam we find it very specifically. Tikshnoshna Ruksha Sukshma Amlam Vyavai Ashukaram Lakhu Vikashi. So that is also given Vikashi. So that Vyavai and Vikashi are supposed to be the some sort of an enhanced levels of Saratvam and Tikshnada. Anyway, it is a matter of discussion or contradictions, obviously. But we have to have some idea about what this Vyavai and Vikashi is, which is explained elsewhere as Vyavai deham akilam vyapya pagaya kalpade Vikashi vikashan dhadun sandhivandhan vimunjati. Fine. So Vikashi Vishadam Madhyam Ojasosmad Viparyayaha Ojasaha Ojoguna Viparyayam. Exactly, it is against the properties of Ojas. Then all these things can be seen in Visha as well. Tikshnadayo Vishepyuktaha. Tikshnadayaha. This Tikshna, Ushna, Ruksha, Sukshma, Vyavai, Ashukaram, Lakhu, Vikashi, Vishadam. All these properties can be seen in Visha as well. And all these things are explained as Chittobaplavinaha gunaha. Chittobaplavinaha. Chittobaplavinaha means Chitta Vibhramakarinaha. So they are Chitta Vibhramakarinaha gunaha. And Vishe, they are having a very dominating presence, very strong presence, and so Visha causes death, even though it is actually just Chittobaplavinaha, but because of its very strong presence against Ojas, obviously that ends up in death, the consumption of Visha. Jividandaya jayante Vishe tu ulkarsha vrittitaha Tikshnadibhirgunaihi madhyam mandadinojasो gunan dashabhirdasha sanchobhya chedo nayadi vikriyam adye made. That is what we find in Madate. This 10 properties of Tikshnadi explained in Madhyam, and they are quite against or exact against or opposites of the Mandadi gunas which are given or attributed to Ojas, and so there will be some sort of a conflict, and when this Madhyam wins over the Ojas, at least temporarily, there will be Cheda Sanchobham or Chedo Vibhramam or Chittobaplavam and Chittobaplavinaha gunaha, and that intoxicates the person. That is how we find the description of this Madhyam in Madateyam, which is also important as well as interesting. Fine. Now there is some sort of a difference in the qualities of Madhyam, which is freshly prepared as well as which is Jirna. That is what we find in the next line. Guru Tridosha Jananam Navam Jirnam Ado Anyatha. Guru Tridosha Jananam Navam. There is a Padha Bedam called Guru Tad Dosha Jananam Navam Jirnam Adonyatha. So Tad Dosha Jananam means Tad Madhyam. Guru Dosha Jananam Navam Tad Madhyam Dosha Jananam and Guru. But I think a better Padham could be Tridosha Jananam. It increases or causes the vritti of all the three doshas when consumed fresh. Jirnamado anyatha. If it is jirnam, that issue will not be there with madhya. Fine. We can expect what is told as in the previous shlokas. Now we will find a couple of more instructions regarding the usage of madhyam. Peyam noshnopacharena na virikta ksudhaduraihi natyartha tikshna mrudu alpasambharam kalusham nacha. Peyam noshnopacharena ushnopacharena na peyam. In the commentaries we will find that this ushnopacharam is some sort of an upalakshana. You have to consider everything which is included in that list, like ushnakalam or ushnadesham, ushnadravya sahacharitvam. So everything is included in that upachara. So peyam noshnopacharena na virikta ksudhadureihi. So in virikta, after doing the virejanam, before completing the samsarjanam and reaching the stage of prakriti bhojanam, you are not supposed to consume madhyam. So that can be standing true with the case of all sorts of Shodhana Chikitsa. So here that Virikta may be considered as an Upalakshana which holds the rest of the Shodhana Chikitsa with it. Then na Kshudhaduraha. Kshudhaduraha is also not supposed to consume Madhyam. Then na Atyartha Tikshna Mrudu. The Madhya should not be Atyartha Tikshnam and Atyartha Mrudu as well. Na Atyartha Tikshna, Atyartham Tikshnam, Aditivra Madagari. Atyartha Mrudu Mada Anulpadagam, which is having no capacity to intoxicate. So it cannot be used as Madhyam. Then Alpasambharam. Alpasambharam. Sambharam is the source materials which are used for making this Madhyam. There are many things which I think we will come to it at least for a basic idea. Kalusham. Kalusham is cloudy, cloudiness. So the Madhyam which is cloudy, that also Napeyam should not be consumed. So that is what we find as a general instruction about all types of Madhyam. Then I think we should have something more known regarding this Madhyam. Basically, because I think it is a very vast subject. This making of Madhya is a huge topic. But I think we should have some basic idea about whether you consume Madhyam or not is another issue. But I think you should have some idea about what this Madhyam all about. We can find that basically, at least in our present society, what is going on. There are mainly three classes of Madhyam as far as its types are concerned. I think the microphone of some of the participants is on, and Deepali Shinde, that is making some unnecessary noise. Please mute it. Then, yeah, there are three basic classes of Madhya as far as its preparation is concerned. They are called either they coming under the beer class category. Second is wines category, and the third one is the spirit. So these are the three types of Madhya what generally prepared, of which we should have some idea about what all these things are all about. Wine, I think wines are the fermented beverages mainly from grapes, just a fermentation, mainly from grapes, but all sorts of fruits are used. Madhyam. One type is wine. Another type is beer, which is in the literature says that it is the most consumed alcoholic beverage in the world, and mainly it is prepared from the fermented grains like barley, yavam, or rice, many other grains. Sometimes a blend of many types of grains are also used to prepare this beer. Then the third one is the spirits, where another stage of preparation is involved, which is called distillation. So sometimes these primarily fermented preparations are further distilled to make the spirits. Actually, this is based on the alcoholic percentage. So by and large, I think almost all of the Madhya which are explained in this for medicinal uses are either wines or beers. Whereas we should strongly suspect that the mechanism or the technology of distilling this the material called the mash was known to Indian ancient our ancestors, and what we find as the usage for the recreational purpose, they could be spirits. There is a lot of difference in the alcoholic content of these beers, wines, and spirits. In the beers, it is almost maybe 4 to 4.5 or 5% maximum, whereas in the wines, which I think almost all our aristas, asavas are coming under that particular type of preparation under wine, which may have a maximum of maybe 11.5 or 12% of alcohol by volume, whereas the spirits, the distilled spirits will have maybe more than 35, 40, 45% of alcohol by volume. So that is how these things are different from one another. Definitely, I think some of these preparations are spirits, but most of them come under either as in the category of wines or in the beers. Somebody who is interested in this field should have a very proper survey of our literature in different context, how these things are made and how these things are prepared. Then regarding that navam and jirnam, that is also a very interesting technique, which is known as the aging of the beverage or the wine or spirit or whatever it is. Navam means kinjit kala adikrantam, whereas jirnam means bahukala adikrantam. So generally these preparations are kept in wooden barrels, sometimes made out of oak wood or whatever is locally available or famous for that purpose, because these barrels themselves are going to contribute in deciding the quality of the madhyam, like the flavor, the aroma, and acceptability as far as the usage is concerned. Everything is very well influenced by the type of the wood in which this aging is made. So that is also an important thing, that navam is tridosha jananam and guru, whereas jirnam is anyatha. Then we find that peyam noshnobacharena na virikta kshuddhaduraihi natyartha tishna mruddu alpasambharam. So we have already or might have gone through such references earlier also. In Ruducharya, we found some interesting references in this regard. In the Grishmacharya, we find madhyam na peyam va swalpam subahuvari va. So it is an application of what we find peyam noshnopacharena in Grishmacharya. We restrict the use of madhyam na peyam va swalpam subahuvari va. In Sharat, which is a Pitta Koparatu, we find Tikshna Madhya Divaswapna Purovadan Parityajed. So in Sharad Rutu, Tikshna Madhyam is not advisable. Then in Vashartu, it is advised. Jangalam Pishidam Yushan Madhvarishtam Chirandanam, that is the Jirna. So it is advised. In Kabha Kopakala, that is Vasantartu, we find Purana Yava Godhuma Kshaudra Jangala Sulya Bhuk Sahakara Rason Mishrana Swadya Priyarpidan Priyasya Sanga Surabhin Priyanetrolpalangidan Saumanasya Krudo Hridyan Vayasyehi Sahida Pibel Nirgadana Savarishta Sidhu Mardvega Madhavan. So in Vasantartucharya, we find very beautiful explanation of the usage of the recreational usage of Madhyam. So that Rutu, that is very influential even in the Shishira Hemanta Rutus. We find the usage Rasan Snigdhan Palam Pushtam Gaudam Achasuram Suram. So that sort of usage we find. Then in Matrachidiyam, we will find when we discuss Anupanam himam vari yavagodhumayorhidam dadhni madhye. So himam vari is advised as the Anupanam for Madhya. Then in Anupanam again we will find Sura Krishanam Pushtyartham. Sura Krishanam Pushtyartham. So we find many usages and some sort of regulations regarding the consumption of Madhyam. And what stands above all these very attractive recreational usages of Madhyam is one statement what we find in Dinacharya, that is Madhya Vikraya Sandhana Dana Panani Najared. So that is Roganulpadaniya. Dinacharya is a part of Roganulpadaniya, isn't it? How to live Ayukamayamane Dharmartha Sugha Sadhanam. So in spite of all these attractive potentials, what is enlisted under this Madhya category, one towering statement which everybody should take for granted is that Madhya Vikraya Sandhana Dana Danani Najared or Dana Panani Najared. Again in Madatyam there is one detailed description about how the recreational usage of Madhyam should be carried out, and which is quite tempting in terms of its consumability. It's which is of course some sort of an advertorial type of explanations, which a common man will find quite attractive. So he will definitely will be inclined towards the potential good effects of consuming Madhyam, maybe with a rational or not. But definitely that part is concluded with that we generally overlook. The statement goes like this: Yatra chaiga smriti bhramshaha tatra sarvam asadhu yad. Even though we find n number of positive attributes related to the consumption of Madhyam, there is one important disadvantage for the Madhyam, that is smriti bhramsham. That alone, that smriti bhramsham, yatra cha eka smriti bhramshaha, just for that particular thing that it creates smriti bhramsham, all the positive attributes which we may put forward over a bargaining table to make some sort of a endorsing the usage of Madhyam is negated. Yatra chaiga smriti bhramshaha tatra sarvam asadhu yad. So I think the take-home message should be more about that disadvantages listed under this heading of Madhyam. Fine. Then so we have already seen some of, and next some terms I think are to be explained. One is that Alpasambharam, Alpasambharada, Natyartha Tikshna Mruttu Alpasambharam. Alpasambharada is insufficient or suboptimal sambharam to make it the unique one. This as far as the making of Madhyam is concerned, that ingredients, they are going to be the identifying factors. All these are basically alcoholic beverages. All of these madhyam are called alcoholic beverages, and all alcoholic beverages are same that way. That means they are alcoholic, and everybody knows that when the yeast is working on sugars, definitely they create alcohol and carbon dioxide. So all madhya visheshas are alcohols, and why should we separate them into different categories? Still there are different categories. As we saw, we have got this wines, there are beers, then spirits. Within the spirits itself you will find n number of categories, like maybe brandy, whiskey, vodka, then cognac or rum, gin, many things you will find under that spirits list. So why all these things are different? They are because of this peculiar type of sambharam which are making, which make one particular madhyam very unique. So if that sambharam is not properly included in sufficient quantity, in the proper optimal time, and for kept for optimal period, I think it is not going to be of the expected result. So this alpa sambharada means when it is suboptimal or insufficient. We know many things which will facilitate the fermentation, like this dhadagi pushpam, we all know. Then many times roots, barks, then certain spices, some seeds, some whole herbs, all these things are added as part of this sambharam. So alpa sambharam is not supposed to be ideal. Then the kalusham, a properly made madhyam is not supposed to be cloudy, but there can be cloudiness again, so it is not ideal for, or it should be considered as an inferior. Napeyam, kalusham, napeyam. Sometimes some sediments may be formed as part of the original fermentation from the beginning itself. When that fermentation is over, I think out of enthusiasm we may be we may start using it before the fermentation process is complete, or we may bottle it before the fermentation is complete. Then from that primary fermentation itself, sedimentations can come. Then sometimes even after one completion of one preliminary fermentation, there may be some sort of a secondary fermentation can happen, a re-fermentation can happen, which will make the madhyam cloudy. Then sometimes other precipitations also can come. So when it is cloudy, that kalusham, it is not supposed to be consumed. Kalusham napeyam. So we get some basic idea about what madhyam is. And in Ashtanga Sangraham, we find mainly 5 sources from which the madhyam is made. The sloka goes like this: Drakshekshu makshigam shaliruttamam vrihi panchamaha. Shaliruttama vrihi panchama. So Draksha, Ikshu, Makshigam, Uttamashali. Uttamashali is Rektashali, and Vrihi. Vrihi is that particular type of paddy where this Shashtigam and everything comes. So Drakshekshu Makshigam Shaliruttama Vrihi Panchamaha Madhyakaraha. Madhyakaraha. That means they are the used as the source for generating that so in original sense, that sugar in which the yeast is going to work. So they are madhyakara. These are the most fashionable or most commonly used types of madhyakara source. Yad ebhyo anyaha tad madhya pradirupakam. But these 5 things are the major, but it is not limited to these 5. Many other things also can be used for preparing these alcoholic beverages, but they are madhya pradirupakam. They can be considered as only as the madhya pradirupakam, as substitutes or pradinidhi of madhya. they cannot be considered as the ideal madhyam. Again, here it is more about the recreational usage of madhyam, need not be about the medicinal usage of madhyam. So they are called madhya pradirupaka, not called but considered as madhya pradirupakam only. Then another interesting observation made by Vagbhada in Sangraham is that Gunairadholbanairvidyad madhyam agara sankarad. Gunairadholbanaihi ulbanaihi gunaihi vidyad madhyam. Madhyam ulbanaihi gunaihi vidyad. Agara sankarad. Agara sankaram. Sankaram, mixing up. And agaram is the materials from which the particular madhyam is made, what we saw as the maybe the sambharam or whatever it is. So of course there may be some technical differences about which I am quite ignorant, but I'm giving you some sort of a bird's eye view or a very peripheral view, so that agara sankaram, mixing up of these materials from which a particular madhyam is made, can happen, or many things can be included in the making of the same madhyam, but its property is going to be defined by the ulbanaihi gunaihi. So whatever is the dominating ingredient which is used, maybe from that 5 which we saw earlier, that madhyakara. So that particular madhyam will be having the gunam of that particular dominating ingredient, and the madhyam will be known after that particular ingredient. So that is about another reference or observation in Ashtanga Sangraha. Then we find the certain specific types of madhyam. Gulmodar arshograhani shoshakrit haradi iti hrit snehani guru surani lakhni medosrik stanyamutra kabhavaha. They increase. Avahati iti avaha. So gulmodara arsho grahani shoshahrit snehani guru sura. We find maybe a certain types of madhya vishesham explained in this context, like sura, varuni, arishtam, then certain other types called shuktam, then asudam, shandagi, dhanyamlam. These are the main things what we find or come across in this prakaranam. So here we start with the sura. Gulmam, udaram, arshas, grahani, shosham. So it can be used in the treatment of these conditions. It is snehani basically. So a dravyam which is ruksham by default, madhyam as a whole, but now this particular variety is snehani. It is snehani. And guru, madhyam as such is lekhu, but this particular one is guru. Then anilakhni, anilaharam, but Shleshmaharatvam is not given. Generally, we saw that it is Pittasra Dushanam and Vada Shleshmaharam, but here only Anilaharatvam is listed. Medo Asrik Stanya Mutra Kabhavaha. So it increases Medas, increases Rektam, increases Stanyam, and increases Mutram and Kabha. So that is what Sura is, and we can find some or other type of usage of Sura in that respective context if you browse through those chapters like Gulmam, Udaram and everything. For example, in as far as that Stanyam, all Madhya has got the capacity to increase the Stanyam except Sidhu, isn't it? There is one type called Sidhu which we will come to later. So shukrodha lankhanayasah stanyanashasya hedavah stanyasya sidhu arjyani madhyani anupacharasaha. So that sidhu arjyani madhyani are called stanyasya hedavah. So that we find. Similarly, we will find usage of Sura in many other contexts as well. This Sura is one particular madhyam which is made out of Pishtashali. Sura is made from Pishtashali. Shali Pishtakritam madhyam Sura. So generally, from the explanation what we saw in the beginning, the madhya which is made out of this grains, they are called, or they come under the category of beer. So either you can consider it as the Sura as a type of beer, but need not be conclusive. My comment in this this particular slokam or this area is very amateur and inexperienced. In any case, from the commentaries, I think commentators were equally ignorant, like me, about this preparations and everything. They stick on to the whatever is available from other sources. They don't have any primary experience in any of these fields. That is what I perceive from what I got. So this is Shali Pishtakritam. It can be considered as a type of beer from that Shali Pishtakritam details. And we can find many usages of this Sura in our Chikitsa Sthanam, like Mutra Krutshram and Ashmari. We find this Sura used very often in different conditions. So that may be one potential area where this can be used. Then we find Tadguna Varuni Hridya. Tadguna Varuni Hridya. Laghustikshna Nihandicha Shulakasa Vamishwasa Vibandha Atmana Pinasan. Shulakasa Vamishwasa Vibandha Atmana Pinasan Nihandicha. So Varuni, another Madhya Vishesham, is Tadguna. Tadguna means having the same gunas of Sura. It is Hridya, Hridaya Priya, and Laghu. So Sura is Guru, whereas Varuni is Laghu. Tikshna, it is Tikshnam, and this particular clinical conditions, what we find that Shuladin Nihanti Cha. So from the commentaries, we find conflicting opinions regarding what this Varuni is. Hemadri comments that Varuni is Shvetasura. Shvetasura. Here, I think it is very interesting. Actually, these comments are very interesting. Shvetasura. In the classification of these wines, we find such divisions like red wine, then white wine, then rose wine or sparkling wine. All these types are categories of wines we find. Maybe beer also may be having that sort of classifications. But here, in a very innocent sense, Hemadri comments that Sacha Shveda Punarnavadi Moolayuktena Shalipushtena Kriyade. So I don't think that it holds true. Hemadri may not be having any idea about it. Maybe he collected this information from some other sources. And there are lots of differences in opinion as well. Arunadatta comments that Varuni is the Prasanna, maybe taking the leads from other commentators. Like you can find one note in the end of that page, which is taken from the commentary of Chandranandana, unfortunately, which is missing. Suraya Acha Uparishtan Mando Varuni Prasanna Ityuchide. So that could be the lead for Arunadatta. Varuni is Prasanna. Suraya Acha Uparishtan Mando Varuni Prasanna Ityuchide. So that Uparishtan Mandaha, maybe that clear top portion of that Sura is known as Varuni. It is also called as Prasanna. So maybe it is the most clarified portion without any precipitate, and of course could be a little bit sparkling in the light. That may be the one which is called as the Varuni. And Chandranandana gives one shloka in support of his stand. Prasanna Varunitneya Parisrunmadira Yatha Kadambari Ghanasura Tadadho Jagala Smritaha. Many new terms come there. So Prasanna Varunitneya. So that topmost clear portion is known as Varuni. Parisrun Madira Yatha. So Parisrun Madira Yatha. Actually, that term is not explained because we don't have that Chandranandana commentary with us. Interestingly, that may be one lead. Parisrud. That shows that it looks like Madira. So we find different terms used, like we find Madhyam. So Madhyam na Peyam, Peyam va Swalpam. And in many contexts, in the Chikilsa Sthanam, we find another word called Madira. We find all these subtypes like Sura or Varuni, all these things, especially in contexts like Mutra Krishram, we meet with Varuni very frequently. But here, another term used in many situations is Madira. So what is the difference between Madhyam and Madira? So that also needs some sort of a deep inquiry. So here, that Parisrun Madira Yatha. So what is the meaning? So it is like the Parisrun Madira. So that Parisrud indicates that it is a distilled product. So the art of or the technology of making that hard alcohol or hard spirit was known very well, and the term Madira could be representing the making of that distilled hard alcohol, which is concentrated alcohol. The rest of the things are gone, and the alcoholic that presence is very high. As I told earlier, that it goes somewhere around 40% alcohol by volume. So that Parisrun Madira Yatha, then Kadambari Ghanasura Tadadho Jagala Smritaha. So definitely, I think this distillation was a commonly known and applied technique, which the other commentators are silent about. So Varuni is Surasama in its guna. That is what the text is discussing about. And we find comments from the Sharnadhara as well, which is entirely different. Sharnadhara makes a different comment that yet Tala Gharjura Rasaihi Sandhita Sahi Varuni. So according to Sharnadhara, Varuni is a Sandhana Vishesham, a Madhya Vishesham, where the source material is Tala Gharjura Rasam. So from the juice of Tala Gharjuram, when you go for this Sandhanam, that is known as Varuni. So I think somebody should work in detail. At least there is a scope for an international publication about this fermentation technology that prevailed in ancient India. I think there are already a few, but still there is space for some specific inquiry into this field. So that is Varuni. Then we find many other types of Madhya Vishesham, which I think we will discuss in our next session. Okay, Nilesh. Who is the organizer now? Shall we conclude? Can I be heard?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can be heard.
Okay.
Yes. So there is a question here. Prasad, sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, yes. What is the advice to be told to people who take alcohol regularly during Ayurvedic treatment in our clinics?
Okay. Yeah, alcoholism, I think, is a big issue. Regular consumption of alcohol is, of course, a big issue. I think, according to the condition of the Vyadhi as well as the Rogi, we have to make decisions, because many a times you need not succeed in convincing the person that it all should be cut, which may not work with, and the person himself need not be in full control of his habit, especially in chronic alcoholism. Actually, the alcohol start prompting, not the person. So he may not be a free person anymore, and he will be under the in the clutches of the alcohol. So he also may not be able to stop it all of a sudden or something like that. I have some experience in that regard, because either they stop the treatment or they go through a very stressful period of withdrawal, physically as well as mentally. So you have to decide. Generally, the decision is the madhyam is not a right choice for any of the types of consumption, but medicinal wines can be used with some sort of a, it is all about the rational use of medicinal alcohols. For recreational use, I think it should not be encouraged by any means. And of course, there will be many other influencing factors, like the cultural aspects could be there, then the geographical peculiarities could be there. Even the human body has got that sort of differences, like in the temperate climate, they may be able to consume alcohol in a safer way, whereas it need not be the case in tropical climates. And the way in which this alcohol is processed within, it is also a very complex thing. So all these things are related to the person as well as his condition, the Vyadhi. So you have to decide accordingly. There is no any standing guidelines in this regard.
Yes, sir. Definitely. Thank you, sir. So with this, sir, I think we can conclude our session today.
Yes. Okay, have a great weekend to all of you. Namaste.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.